site in this particular area would be to provide the necessary handoff coverage, not too close so your phone gets confused, and not too far away so that your calls get dropped. And so they issue what we call a search ring. And the search ring, if I could do my thing, we're going to do a group Q&A. Yes, sir.
You list the cell towers that you all have. Is that a fact that you all rent your space out to other companies too? Why aren't the other cell towers from the other company also shown on that?
Okay, let me start over then. I'm Greg Rapisarda. I'm a land use and zoning attorney. I'm with the law firm Saul Ewing, and I'm outside counsel for AT&T. So we're here tonight on AT&T's proposal. Now, we have relationships with all of the other carriers. But we are proposing a tower to fulfill AT&T's coverage gap and coverage needs. And so it will be available to other carriers, which is one of the Montgomery County Code requirements. Which also shows, let's say Verizon had a tower a quarter mile away. If AT&T wasn't already on it, and we needed coverage in a certain area, then we would co-locate on that existing structure. In fact, the Montgomery County Code, so it kind of makes sense too from a business perspective, but the Montgomery County's code says, and most county codes say this, if you propose a new structure, there can't be an existing structure that could fill your gap. And so, obviously, we're going to follow the code, but also think about it from a business standpoint. If AT&T could fill this coverage gap here by installing antennas onto an existing T-Mobile tower or Verizon tower, it would be a by right. You go to the tower committee, they'd approve it, then you get a building permit, and you'd go through that, and you'd put it up. Probably be on air in about, 60 days on the outside. What we have to do for a special exception, when we can't find a place to put our antennas onto an existing structure, is find raw land, right? Just land. It has to meet the code requirements. So, for instance, you couldn't put it on a half-acre residential parcel. You'd have to meet certain setbacks.
You still didn't answer my question. Why are the other cell towers listed? You're giving us the impression there's a big empty zone.
From what I understand, there's over, 400 cell towers within 5 miles of this place?
Well, the answer is because we're here for AT&T.
Okay. And everything that AT&T show us the benefits that has already.
Okay, so we do the raw land. Sir, I answered it. We do the raw land.
No, you didn't. Why are they listed on it?
What's the definition of raw?
So raw land. Land that doesn't have an existing structure on it that we could put our antenna.
Do you live in this neighborhood?
Where's our benefit? Health problems for our children? That's what we get out of this?
Well, I'm sorry. Let me finish. So again, we're getting into just yelling. If you let me propose this.
This is a diagram from 2006 from Cingular Wireless, from a Berkman proposal. It looks very similar to this proposal here for the Berkman site. All right? Not much difference. The difference is between that proposal and this proposal is Cingular Wireless looked at 7 other sites, and it's all and they're on in this diagram. When you look at your proposal, you looked at one other site, and that was St. John the Baptist. You did not look at the
Oh, I also looked at the apartments.
And they all said
in your proposal, I'm looking at your proposal right here. It says St. John the Baptist. You already knew without campus, you only looked at one site. So I'm asking you, how come you didn't do due diligence to look at these other sites? Because it doesn't say you did it here.
Right.
So what's the answer?
Well, the answer is this site. I don't know why.
Okay, there you go.
Okay, so let me finish. Okay. So they find it. We start to rule out or analyze and evaluate co-location sites. Right. We did look at the one from 2006. We didn't look at all of those other ones, but that's a question that we have, and maybe that's something that we can address in our
There's
resubmission
many
package.
other sites in this area. You don't
So-
wipe out a middle forest that's going to create stormwater issues and flooding issues.
So
for the
what we need
residents
when
that-
there's a new structure needed, we need code compliance, we need a willing landlord,
We don't need a cell tower.
and we need our radio.
We don't need a cell tower.
I tell you what, if you prefer, take my card, call me individually. Because we can't, I have to leave tonight knowing that I have provided you with the basic information. And I can tell you, and I will address it, and hopefully in 20 minutes, but it's certainly taken a lot longer. There's a lot of misinformation out there from one flyer that I have.
I want
What's-
to point.
what's-
I must point out.
What I'm asking you to do, what I'm asking you to do, nope, I can't jump in and jump around. Let me get through the presentation. I know you have at least the facts as we're presenting them. Then you can ask questions or follow up.
As you are representing.
You must have printed out of your facts.
Not what the facts are.
This is dated 10/6.
There's no need to be rude. Really?
So
They're coming in here and hurting them like a
instead of talking to us about this, which we know you're going to say, okay? Why don't you talk to us about the difference in the plans
Cell phone tower.
that you've now had authorized and notarized at 10/6? Because that's really what we'd be interested in hearing. That's actually new information for us. We got that one.
Okay, I'm gonna go through my presentation.
Oh, come on. Don't you get it? We don't want your presentation. We want you to address the issue.
Some of us want to hear what he has to say.
Let him talk, let him talk.
Let him talk.
Thank you. So what's our objective here? What's the RF objective? Enhance and improve coverage, voice and data, Dennis Avenue, Sligo Creek Parkway, Hayes Avenue, Inwood, Dublin, August Creek, Greenhaven. My coverage is fine. So if we could put our antennas on an existing structure, and we'll rule them all out if they haven't already, we do it. There's no community meeting, there's no public hearing, there's no 4 to 6 month process for a special exception. There's no capital investment. There's no lease with a landholder. Well, actually there is. There will be a lease for wherever the antennas go.
How
But
long
it's
is
not
the
for the area.
How long is the lease?
I don't do the leases, and I don't share that information. That's between a private landowner and AT&T.
Who's the owner of the property?
So what we looked
No,
at for
who's the
this-
owner of the property? Just, who's the owner?
Sligo Baptist Church.
But who runs Sligo Baptist Church?
I think the owner, which you can look up on SDAT, which I have in my file, actually it might be.
That's way out of date. I did look it up. It's way out of date.
Sligo Baptist Church, that's the property owner.
Yeah, but who runs the church? Who's the legal entity?
So, I don't know, man.
Okay, good.
I mean, I don't deal with them.
It's an LLC. That's.
No, he doesn't know who the owner
We
is. That's
looked
fine.
at T-Mobile has a chimney at 2103 Hilder Road Drive, the Fields Apartments. It's almost a mile from our search ring center. The radio frequency engineers had a small search ring center because you can tell how tight the coverage is here, the facilities, how close they are.
These are new.
And so we're really looking at somewhere in the quarter mile, half mile. So we looked at that. We looked at for a raw land, which, sir, that's what you were referencing. We approached St. John Evangelist at 1201 Woodland, okay? We talked about the possibility of a steeple there, or the possibility of a new structure on their property. Ultimately, Archdiocese of DC said, we're not going to lease out space for this.
Yeah. They care about the children.
Now let's talk about Sligo Church. Everybody needs, well, most people want and need coverage in their home. Is that correct? Or is that just asking too much?
Not.
No, that's correct.
Problems to our children.
Right? How many people have a smartphone?
Yes, we all.
How many people use it in their house? How many people have called 911 from their smartphone in the last year?
Don't need to.
Right? How many people
have dropped calls.
How many people need better coverage?
None.
How many people need AT&T to have better coverage?
Verizon.
Well, I guess part of that
No
question
problem.
would be how they define coverage.
Switch. It's easier.
I'm gonna have to ask you to go out on a limb here, but our radio frequency engineers who are managing the network, they know what level of coverage people as a whole need, not individuals. They might not be able to say this person that makes one call from their driveway is gonna be fine. It's not that specific. It's areas, okay? So let's talk about Sligo Baptist Church.
Incorporated.
It's 4.16 acres, and it is in a residential area. Okay? From a zoning perspective, right? Nobody's gonna make tomatoes here.
Right.
It's a perfect location because people want and need wireless services in their home. But we don't want
We
it.
have it.
But we don't want
We have it
it.
already.
It's a bad location because you don't have the knowledge to understand stormwater
Of that
drainage.
4.16 acres,
You can email them.
of that 4.16 acres, 3.49 are wooded. Okay? And you know the neighborhood, right? It's hilly, and there are tall trees everywhere.
And it's wetlands.
So it's one of those things where, again, right, from a zoning perspective, perfect. Because folks are, all right, I understand. I understand we have different opinion here.
That's why you have to apply for
So, I say perfect because if I have a 50, 60, 70-foot tree near my backyard, and my angle to it is that, you could put a 1,000-foot pole a few hundred feet away and I wouldn't see it. Because I'm only gonna see the tree. So that's why I'm saying it's perfect. It
We
cuts
live
down the
directly
neighborhood.
across the street from it, and when our families get sick, why don't we come to you? Because it's perfect, because it was for your
Well,
business.
I guess what I'd say is
You're
it would
talking
be.
from a business perspective, and you're not thinking about the health of other people.
Yes, yes, yes.
Be a little bit more respectful
Right.
with how you talk.
Can I ask you for clarification on something you already said? You said that it would be easier if you could just co-locate and you wouldn't have to go through this whole process.
Yes.
True. Isn't it true that if you did build this tower, other companies could co-locate, it would be a source of revenue for the company to continually add? And couldn't you add additional towers in that same location once the zoning exemption is put in?
No. So, the last question, no. So, you have to get a special exception for every tower. And every tower or monopole that is approved by a special exception is approved at a specific height for a specific number of carriers. And once you expand outside of that, you're amending the special exception, and you have to go through the process all over. So, for instance, sometimes I think what you might be referring to, there are times you might see two towers, and they look like they're 50 foot apart. I don't know if you've seen that, tower farms, 2 or 3 towers in the same area. Well, that's old. Those are probably 15 years old, because nowadays zoning codes don't allow you to do that. So, anyway, right, let me tell you some facts that we know from our environmental engineers at Ecotone. There are no streams on the property. There are no wetlands, no non-tidal wetlands, and we know there are no tidal wetlands. There are no regulated water sources on the property. Okay? Now, to the west,
What is the West?
there are 3 in-stream stormwater management facilities. Right? Oh, let me show you this. This is,
Those are wetlands. Those are wetlands. Environmental impact study?
Those-
Are we doing one? Is there any
of
plan?
course.
And who's gonna?
You don't build something like this
When our
without
properties
that.
start to flood because of the displacement of the water, who's gonna?
So let's
take
talk about
insurance?
why are there 3 stormwater management facilities?
Because we have a
Flood
runoff
zone.
problem, because you're gonna make it worse.
We're in a flood zone. We're in a flood zone.
Right, okay.
We
So
have
it's
flood
for residential
insurance.
development and impervious surface, okay? A single telecommunications facility is not going to impact
How
that.
many trees?
With a 300
Gotta guarantee it. Gotta guarantee it.
Yes, because it goes through multiple levels of review. There are federal reviews, there are state reviews, there are county reviews. We can impact it, we won't. And whatever you do, you would offset, but we're not even getting there because we're not going to impact it. So we have 3.49 acres of forested wooded area, right? This entire proposal is going to be less than 5,000 square feet. Okay? So of the wooded area that's going to need to come down, 3,800 square feet.
Oh, you mean you're not going to drive any maintenance trucks in there?
It includes it. The maintenance trucks are a regular sized pickup truck or an SUV.
With these.
Those are what the maintenance technicians drive. There was a lot of misinformation. That's why I want to make sure that
Excuse me,
you
sir.
can get this.
One question. What did your original proposal say was the amount of woodlands to be cleared?
5,200. That's the original.
So this is,
So it's not misinformation,
right,
it's
because that was
fact, new
on, that was the
information.
amount of woodlands that would be cleared on the application that you first filed with the county. Am I correct about that?
It's not misinformation, it's new information.
It could be new information.
Exactly, so let's
What
not
I
accuse
know-
us of misinformation when it's new.
Exactly. We're just trying to make
It's
sure
a-
you understand.
Wait,
because
what
these
I'm
are-
saying,
this
what
is the
I
first
remember
time-
them saying, no, I'm sorry, I remember them saying incorrectly, the engineering firm, when they were looking at this, 5,200 limits of disturbance, which is not tree clearing.
Yes,
So-
it says on there.
Okay.
It says on
Yeah,
there.
it is. That's an important fact. Check the picture.
Just
Important fact.
originally, when we were just proposing the site, Ecotone is our environmentalist who went out there. It was a little bit further down off the access road. So limits of disturbance is this little compound and a little access road all together. So we had to actually move it to meet all the setback
It
requirements.
says total area to be cleared, 0.12 acres, that's 5,200 square feet.
Right, originally.
It says this.
So, and is this the first time that these charts have been made public? Have we filed these with?
No, we haven't refiled it because we're in the process of working with
So this is the first time that anyone outside of AT&T or Ecotone has been shown this new map?
We had a meeting with the county last week and we went over.
But there is no way that anyone in the neighborhood would have seen this
No,
beforehand?
that's why this meeting is so
All right,
important.
so it's not misinformation, it's new information.
So,
Yes.
That's a good point.
Seems like misinformation so far, we've heard it's come from you.
just say yes and move on.
If we are, you are saying that your
Can you let Phil
information
talk,
is
please?
biased.
I would love to hear
Let
Phil.
talk.
We needed to move it to meet all the county setback requirements. Originally, it was a little bit further, it was like over here, that additional area was 5,200. We had to push it closer to road, which was better, less disturbance, and we meet all the zoning setback requirements.
May I ask you, is this after the forest conservation plan?
Let me tell you, okay.
I'd like to hear from Phil.
It's, Ecotone, we work with Ecotone, so it's with the forest conservation plan, that's our current one.
Phil's with Tectonic.
So the county came back with a forest conservation plan for you from the original proposal?
No, we did the forest conservation plan with the.
And that's been submitted, this new one has been submitted to the county?
It has not. They have. I can't remember if they submitted the preliminary sketch, but we don't expect approval for another 4 weeks.
Well, what the county has didn't show the tower.
So there are 3.49 acres of forested land, right? With this proposal, it will drop down to 3.4 acres of forested land.
I'm sorry, can you say that again, please?
She's taking minutes.
Just taking minutes.
Sure. So it's a 4.16 acre parcel. And I guess what I'd say is, obviously, this is how it's designed right now, but it's subject to change.
Could you just
So we
clarify
have-
the apparent reduction?
Sure, it looks like it's 3.49 to 3.4.
3.49 to 3.4?
The 3.4 acres of wooded land will be preserved and placed into a permanent forest conservation easement. So this easement only relates to the tower. Without the tower, there's not 3.4 acres of woodland preserved in an easement.
Hey, everybody, just let you know, what he said before was wrong. He did not put this thing on hold. His letter from Catherine Freeman, who's Board of Appeals, it says, the above referenced case, we were just informed by the technical staff of Park and Plan that the application did not include an approved preliminary forest conservation plan. They rejected your plan, and now you're redoing this. Don't say you put it on hold. The county, Park and Plan, look at your first plan and said it sucked. The county
Okay.
is the key tab.
So, what we're proposing, you can see in the access road here.
Sorry.
This is an access road off of Dennis Avenue. Goes to an equipment compound. AT&T's equipment compound is 25 by 30 feet. Then there's a space set aside for another future carrier, 15 by 25 feet, and another future carrier, 15 by 25 feet.
No way.
No
way.
So 3 carriers.
You are kidding.
They are proposing, right, and the entire thing. And there's a 55,000 square feet.
So it's a
Or would Verizon
No, right now, 3,600 square feet is just Verizon. So the additional, right, if you bump it up, it's costing about $1,000.
So what is that? I'm sorry, say that again?
Phil, could you
even with, let me just ask
Phil, could you say what you just said?
so that everybody
Hey, right now, it's around 3,700 square feet with the compound of access road. With the future carriers, if possible, it gets it bumps it up under 5,000 square feet.
Alright, so the 5,000 square feet or under is including the space for Verizon or T-Mobile or Sprint or any of the other 2 carriers. We're proposing a 101-foot monopole, which would allow AT&T to install its antennas, a second carrier to install their antennas, and a third carrier to install their antennas. Approximately at 97, 87, the center of their antennas being at 97 feet above ground level, 87 feet above ground level, and 77 feet above ground level. Within the equipment compound, and I know that this has come up, there's a diesel backup generator.
Yep.
So this diesel generator is the type of generator. Now, AT&T.
How many gallons in the skid tank? Come on.
210.
200 gallons. And when you have a power failure, how long will it
Filed
run?
with Montgomery County for hazmat?
It's not. So.
Oh, wait, this is important. Don't you have to file that with Montgomery County as a hazmat on site? This is important to know.
That's what it's,
Okay, well, where does it know?
First thing though, is it's not part of the zoning part. But that doesn't mean it's not part of some review. Okay, this is a generator that it has the gas tank with it. And it's inside of our equipment compound. And it comes on, it can be set, but it's, once a week for 15 minutes or once a month for 15 minutes. And it only runs. Now, I'm thinking more of a
We're going to hear
residential.
a generator once a week.
Well, how many, does anybody mow their lawns here? Because a
Yeah.
lawn mower is allowed. All I can do is tell you that.
It's noise pollution.
Oh, wait, no, this
So it's
is
once a
really
month.
important, because Phil, you're telling us it's once a month?
We've installed thousands of generators from coast to coast as backup. The generator needs to just run, just to make sure everything's running correctly.
How
So it
long?
does like a self-check, about 15 minutes, and you can set it for whatever day, whatever time. And typically, every carrier is a little bit different, but it's usually once a month.
Excuse me.
Okay, but I just want to go on record as saying there are 2 conflicting pieces of information from the representatives that we have here tonight. And to your knowledge, it was once a week. And to your knowledge, it's once a month. And for the residents, I'm sorry.
What I'm
Sir,
saying is.
can I finish my
What
thought?
Phil said is that it can be set to run anytime.
No, Phil
And
said
he
once a
said they've
month.
installed thousands, and then it's usually set once a
So why
month.
don't you just say you don't know?
Excuse me,
Why
what?
don't you just say you don't know?
Phil says once a month.
Yeah, it would be better.
So,
This is important
We know.
because it's in our community. I understand that you have a whole proposal that you need to go through and you need to give us information, but what you need to understand is that this won't be your backyard, my friend. This will be mine. And whether it's once a week or once a
It's
month.
once a month according to Phil.
Well, you just, I know, but you're supposed to be the expert.
You want to tell us the
You're
facts?
supposed
Tell
to
us
be-
the facts.
So,
Well, why don't you listen about people from mowing their lawn? Yeah, that's
Right.
about.
And
Some
wait for the
concerned
agenda.
about everybody throws their phone away.
all right,
Can I
so.
ask a question related to something you just said about the generator? I think you said something about the generator not being part of the approval process? Is that correct?
There's nothing in the zoning regulations about
Okay.
registering
Okay,
that
so,
gas.
so then my follow-up question is, my neighbor here brought up about the environmental impact assessment. That generator with the 200 gallons of diesel fuel is gonna be plunked right in the middle of water. There is water.
It's on
Big
top of this.
storm water.
Oh, so actually, no, it's on.
Okay, well, so it's a few feet away.
It's on top of the hill.
So is the environmental impact assessment going to be addressing the generator?
The environmental impact addresses all of that.
May I ask,
And that, by the way, I think it's worth noting, Phil said they install thousands of these. It's not like this is a.
But do they leak?
They have,
that's not.
they have generators on all of theirs. It's an emergency backup generator. So when you lose power, if you lose, has anybody ever lost
Phil?
power?
May I ask
Yeah.
So if you lose power in the neighborhood, you go to your cell phone.
And when you lose power in the neighborhood, how long does the gen set run? Continually, correct?
You know?
So it might run upwards of 96 hours of diesel. Is that the operating time on a 200 gallon skid tank? Okay, so now you have a diesel
It could
running
be
in the
longer
neighborhood.
because it would be, now I can just tell you when I lost power in my neighborhood.
That's not our neighborhood.
No, all I can tell you is that the individual generators make more noise than I could have ever heard from a telecommunications.
Private
facility.
concern, this is a public concern. 96 hours of diesel.
use diesel backup?
Sure they do.
No, they have that.
All carriers use diesel backup.
Yes, most of like T-Mobile, Verizon, AT&T, we've done them all. They all use diesel. There are some cases where natural gas is used, or propane, but that's if, the source is nearby.
What about the
Well,
T-Mobile
we don't
tower
have
in
gas
Burnsville
here,
that uses
so why
battery
didn't you
backup?
look into that?
What about the T-Mobile tower in Burnsville that uses battery backup? How common is that?
I'm not aware of that one.
Any diesel leaks, any spills in your experience?
No.
Well,
actually not.
here, right here.
I have a comment. I've been holding this up here for 5 minutes. I had a comment on the generator. I've installed 15 of them in the last 2 years. It is a requirement from the manufacturer of those generators that they are started once a week. And that is their cycle time. So where you're coming up with once a month, it's nice to hear, it sounds good to some of the people, but it is once a week. Monan, all the way up to prior end was that week. Or you lose your warranty. I don't think you're gonna void your warranties on your generators.
Well, that's the take up from carriers. I know the carriers that I've dealt with from Southwest all the way up to here. They have restrictions on their generators, their community, and they have assessments once a month cycle. Verizon, AT&T, and T-Mobile.
If anybody has information on diesel spills, I'd like to hear it.
Well, I got it right here. So it does happen. I checked it. It happens quite frequently. And also, AT&T was fined $1.5 million by the Environmental Protection Agency, Environmental Appeals Board, for over 300 violations for diesel fuel and sulfuric acid. So what he says is that it's a safe issue, and just imagine diesel fuel, because this place with this tower is on top of the hill. You can imagine that diesel fuel leaks into equipment going into the watershed, the entire watershed.
In what context were those fines? Were they real relative to a manufacturing facility, were they residential areas?
All sides.
Yeah, I can't address that.
You can't address a lot, you just throw it up.
Seems like you have a lot of misinformation on misinformation you give us. Or if you're not
I'm giving
informed
you
in the information you are giving.
So, I guess what I'd say is, I don't know what your name is, but if you want to give me a copy of that, I can run down some info on it.
Sure.
And see how it would impact this
EPA
proposal.
fined you guys at $1.5 million.
Right.
If you want to put a tower on top of the hill, down
I have no idea
my property.
where that is, where they were
My
finding.
case is interesting, why you don't know about this.
Okay, so what animals are involved down here?
200.
White-tailed deer, right?
Little Karen's counting bees.
Let's wait. Go ahead. Keep
So
going.
all of this,
White-tailed
that
deer
type
and
of
birds.
impact.
That's all you have? White-tailed deer and bird?
So those are the ones that our folks have seen on site.
You don't even know what a diesel generator is.
There is a federal approval process called NEPA, or a section 106.
What's that, NEPA?
NEPA, the National Environmental Protection Act. Policy Act. And that will look at whether there's endangered species. It'll look at historic properties, properties that are eligible to be listed on the list. So that's a separate federal application and review that goes on.
Is this your NEPA hearing? Is this your NEPA hearing?
No, it's not a NEPA hearing.
This doesn't satisfy NEPA's requirement, this
No,
hearing?
NEPA is its own federal application.
No, but don't they require community?
It's not a hearing, no.
There's no community notification?
Is there an exemption?
There are exemptions for co-location when you're adding antennas to an existing facility. Which is not this, right? So, what we know is that there's no endangered species, and the species that are there, as you would know, living in a residential area, they're accustomed to a fragmented environment. And so adding 5,000 square feet for a telecommunications facility does not impact them when there are hundreds of impervious homes throughout the area.
You're gonna take away more green space and you're saying that it's not gonna have an impact? Are you crazy?
Well, so I guess the whole thing here, right, is a balance.
Your position is indefensible and we don't want to.
So I guess the whole thing here, right, is a balance between the county's goals for development, a property owner's development rights, and other concerns. And most of these concerns are handled by experts at the local, state, and federal level.
Versus the health of our children and families.
So,
There's no dollar amount that equals putting our
Just one
children.
second, point. Wait, let me ask you a question.
I've been invisible because I have my hand up this entire meeting. But I think what I find insulting about this presentation is that you are, first of all, you are insulting all of us. Right? And you've come into this as you know it all, and you're here to present, you're not going to change my mind. Right? But I wanted to hear what you had to say because I think everything you're saying is disingenuous. You show us these pictures of coverage that really aren't the true picture of what coverage looks like. You talk about the diesel fuel that's going to, it could leak and come down the hill into the watershed and affect homes. You're going to have this huge tower, which I'd like to see a balloon test.
Yes,
see what it
balloon
really
test,
looks like,
absolutely.
because I want to see what it looks like from my home. I feel that you've come, and if this isn't, you've come to check the box and told the county.
Yes.
You had your meeting, but you're not here, you haven't heard people
well,
say.
I'm sorry if that's the impression. So the impression, here's the goal.
Can't help it.
Let her finish.
I'm sorry, let her finish.
Let her finish.
I also understand, and maybe it's misinformation, maybe you're giving me new information, but that the technology you want to put here is going to be obsolete. That this, that we've got enough coverage, and I just feel that what you're doing here is you've made your decision, and you're going to put it in, and you're going to fight the neighborhood until you're blue in the tooth, and it's driving me crazy.
Because it adds
we
value
don't
to
want it
AT&T.
here. Now, to our neighbors who say, let them talk, I appreciate letting them talk, and people saying, maybe I do want more cell phone coverage. But it doesn't have to happen in our backyard. It doesn't have to happen in a residential place. You don't need a special exception. We don't run it in a residential area.
right up the
apologize
street.
if I've insulted anybody. The goal here,
Oh,
the goal here isn't to spin everything. I'm not the environmental expert. What I'm telling you, I'm not the guy that goes out and looks to count the white-tailed deer. I'm not the guy that goes out and looks for the historic landmark, right? There are experts throughout this entire process. This is a zoning process. And as a matter of zoning, towers of certain height are acceptable in residential areas. Why? Why would that be acceptable?
Money.
because people
Money.
aren't early enough to come to this kind
Everyone
of
here
meetings.
uses their smartphones.
You move.
Data usage has increased.
And they all, and they're serving them in our backyard.
All of you are customers. You're filming me on iPhones. These are customers. You're customers.
One thing you just saying, square feet to acre. How much 5,000 square feet in relation to the number of acres we've been talking about?
Right, so there's 3.49 wooded acres on the parcel, 4.16 total, 3.49 wooded parcels, and after this, there will be 3.49 wooded parcels. After this, there will be approximately 3.4 acres of wooded parcel, and it would have a preservation easement on it. Now, let's just say, I mean, people can do what they want with their property to a certain extent. Let's just say that the church subdivided their parcel, it's in a residential area, and they put up homes on it. They can clear 2.13 acres, just to put this in perspective. We're going to clear 0.9 acres to put up a telecommunications facility. They can put up, I'm just telling you in terms of, they can put up 2.1.
You're insulting our intelligence again with that.
No, because the reason that's important is because the perception could be that this is a huge project. This project will not require additional stormwater management under county regulations, and they're pretty strict, and state. It will take out some of the church's properties for it. But as a result, it will leave
Drainage.
the remainder under a forest preservation easement, which wouldn't happen under maybe not other development, but certainly not residential development. Nobody probably has a forest preservation easement on their own parcel.
We take care of ours.
And a question for Phil. Can you have a diesel generator that size and that class in a residential neighborhood?
I'm sorry, can I?
The diesel backup. Can you have a unit of that size and that class running in a residential neighborhood? Could be, we've lost power many, many days in a row, so you run that thing for days and days and days. Is it within code? Can you do that?
There's a law.
The decibels?
Decibels, pollution,
Decibels.
you got 5 days.
So the noise decibels, so
It's not noise.
it will comply with the noise ordinance.
Right, how about pollution and additional? I mean, you've got days and days of, we've lost power in some of these places, 4, 5, 6 days. So that thing will just constantly be running. Yeah, constantly running. That is the genset.
I guess, unless they couldn't get to it for some reason, or unless they restore power to it.
Well,
So this is an unmanned facility. It's an unmanned facility, it has its own power source.
What's inside the station?
Sitting outside, your genset will sit outside your little building.
And just churn out,
Yeah,
and just
it's a
churn out
All
pollution.
of us sit outside the building.
It's a station.
Everybody's gonna have a belly tank on there.
Or within it,
So
yes.
we'll end up with 3 gensets sitting there.
That's right. That's right. That's right.
And I will tell you, it still has to abide by the noise ordinance.
Does it have a heater?
It does.
Does it have a cooler? Yeah. Do they emit sound? Like a hum?
Wait, Phil, you're not.
Yes, they hum,
Do they emit sound?
just like
Are we
ours.
talking about this generator?
Yeah, are you allowed to have
No,
3 of those
it's
large class
sound.
generators
Okay.
running at the same time
Is there
in
any
a small
sound from the
environment?
cell tower when the generator is not running? Is there a hum? Is there,
Yes.
this
I
is
don't know
important.
that information.
Well,
The
who does that?
generator's not running.
You know who does that?
The generator's not running and just the shelter there and the antennas and stuff. I don't have that information.
Where can we get that information?
AT&T or Verizon has a noise assessment.
Who are those people that we can talk to?
Who's the representative in contact? What's the contact?
That would be important for us.
So you can contact me,
That would be.
email me any questions.
You don't,
and I'll
can I ask a question? You don't know that about sound? Because I know you do this. Wait, can I finish? Because I know you do this all the time about cell towers, right? Because you said that in the beginning. You do this all the time.
Yeah, I don't know of any other sounds other than the generator.
You don't know of any other sounds coming from a cell tower other than the generator. All right, make sure that.
Particularly off-site, I guess what you're
Can I ask
asking,
a
you're
quick
asking about. Yes, ma'am.
For me, I'm just gonna be honest, I came here just trying to find out the next steps. I'm against the cell phone tower, I don't want it, but I was willing to listen. But I also thought at this meeting, we were gonna figure out what the next steps were so that we could be here as a community to discuss it, like whether it be with the county, to see what those facts are. So do you have that? How would we get that?
I have it.
Okay, so how do we get that from you?
Where we are in this process is AT&T is doing what's called an MRI.
Excuse me, sir, can you stand there so we
Yeah,
can
we
all
can't
hear
hear you.
you and speak?
Do we get your email too? Is there one source that everybody can go to? I know I'm on it.
It is called
Evans Parkway.
National Resources Inventory is an MRI, so that's you define all the trees are and stuff. So they're in the process of the county's house, filling out the MRI. After the MRI, they're going to do what's called a forest conservation plan. Okay? At that time, when they are complete, these guys are completed, we will have about 3 weeks to comment on the forest conservation plan. Okay? I have several environmental groups that are going to be reviewing this fine tooth and comb. So that is where we can, and there's going to be a public hearing for the park and planning sometime in probably November, December, where residents can come in and speak specifically to the forest conservation plan, the issues with that. So that's where the community can come in and voice their concerns about the forest conservation plan. But we need to, I'd like to get a commitment from you guys to get copies of, as you interface with the county, we like to get copies of these documents so we can pass them around to the community. I think that's a reasonable request.
Share the facts.
So I don't think it's reasonable to provide everybody here with copies of stuff, but I'm happy to provide.
Soft copies.
Yes,
Send them to me,
exactly.
Well, just put them on our website. No problem.
Share the facts.
Soft copies.
So that's 2 action points, right? So you're gonna share something with everything with Ted, and you're gonna do the balloon test.
Well, I didn't
have an update on the
And our site visit.
Here, let me talk about the balloon test for a minute, and this is something that we would like to do.
Because you
Yeah,
said
I'm gonna
you would.
try to get through it, I know I would, but you see where this is going, right? So I definitely want to touch on property values.
Because I know you do this all the time.
So, the balloon test, we did a balloon test to do our own assessment, right?
When was that?
And these are,
Wait.
this is shown over there.
What
Phil,
date
do you
was
know
that?
when you did that? Remember the date?
Where?
snow on the ground in the picture.
Yeah, there's no leaves on the trees and snow on the ground, so at some point over the winter.
Why wasn't this toilet paper where that?
So we do this so that we can evaluate it ourselves.
But we want to evaluate it.
I
We're gonna
understand.
fight you. So we.
Yeah, like, share the facts.
So,
Why wasn't you told that?
Come on, just tell us the truth.
because we don't tell, so this process has been in. Okay.
You know what, I have a question.
Does anybody have a question?
I have a question.
I can't talk over
Actually, I
all.
have a question.
Yes,
Would you want this to go right next to your house?
ma'am. I guess it depends.
I do not have a guess for your own business proposition.
So I guess that's part of the issue here is that this has 100 factors that we're taking into account.
But you can't say yes.
For 6 or 8 months or 12 months of due diligence, looking at different things. So to say right out of the blue, like, would you want this next to your, I have no
It's a
idea.
simple
What I
question.
can tell you is that drive around the neighborhood, the tree cover is excellent for cutting down visual impact.
I didn't think you were.
We spoke about a balloon test, and you said you were going to pass that on to AT&T.
And I am, and I'll have to get back. So the other thing I also have up in the air right now, whether we come and do any additional information at your end of the month meeting, and the balloon test. I want to confirm
The
that.
site visit also was on time.
This balloon test was done in the winter, with there's snow on the ground. Who plows the access road to the cell tower site in the snow?
That's usually an agreement between the.
Came up with the same kind of trip.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
You're talking about diesel tanks and this cell tower, and you mentioned that this technology might be disappearing over in the near term. How large is the bond to remove this tower and to remove the diesel tanks?
Bill, do you know the bond, the size of the bond? So assuming this tower is approved and built, we had to put a bond on it.
So no one knows anything.
Can we get that information, Greg? If you could?
Well, the county would actually have that, they would set it. And when you fill out a building permit, you have to put on there like how much it's going to cost, and the bond has something is related to that. So I will absolutely, if you want to take my card, and I mean, I'm gonna make a note of it.
Send it to him.
Okay.
I feel like this environment has not been fostering questions very well. It's not been managed very peacefully, to be honest. Could we maybe, it's getting late, it's 7:15.
Yes.
Could we have some quiet time where folks who, it's set up so that we have to shout questions. Maybe let's get so people feel comfortable raising their hands, and we'll get called on, and that person will have an opportunity.
Bring up the podium, get them in line.
So, and if I could just, let me touch on two things that were other concerns that were raised. One is property values, impact people's property values, and one was health effect. So, property values. If you take a look, and you can do your own studies, right? There hasn't been a study that showed a direct correlation to a reduction in property value. Right?
Do you talk to realtors?
And so what I mean by that is if you look at, look at a neighborhood where there's a cell tower built in the neighborhood. Okay?
When's the last one you all built?
And look at how much those homes sell for before there's a cell tower. And better are neighborhoods where one half of the neighborhood or 5 houses from the neighborhood can see the tower, and 5 similar houses in the same neighborhood can't see the tower. When those were studied side by side, okay, here's a 2,000 square foot house or a 4,000 square foot house with this, and the other, and then here's one has a view, one doesn't. Take into account the market that it's sold. They don't sell for any different. Now,
You're insulting our intelligence. Yeah, that's obfuscation. You're insulting us with that example.
What a term called marketing challenge is. Do you know what that term is?
I do.
What is it?
So, what I'm telling you.
Tell me your version.
No, I'm sorry. I have to touch on a couple things, then we can open it up for questions. This isn't about, let's test Greg and see if he knows about realtors, right? All I've done is talk to experts, okay? What I can tell you, this is what I can tell you. So, if you have information, great, present it to me. I'd love to see it and analyze it.
You're the expert.
What I'm telling you is that actual studies that, okay, there's one, the Bullitt School here in Montgomery County. Does anybody know where that is?
Yes.
Okay. So there's 120 foot, maybe, monopole that was built in that neighborhood. Homes range from 1.2 million to 2.5 million. Several studies on that neighborhood alone showed no impact on property value. Sold during the same.
There's nobody near it.
See the tower? Show us the study. If property values go down 1%, you're talking hundreds of thousands of dollars of losses to this neighborhood.
So
hundreds of thousands of dollars
So
of
the
losses.
other piece of that would be, if that in fact were true, right? people have said here tonight, there's already 40 towers around here. We already have enough coverage. Well, if that was true, then why have it on the property values? I mean, it doesn't, there's no correlation between a cell tower, the view of a cell tower,
The health aspects of
and,
myself.
so that's that, you can touch on that. They're called paired sales analysis, and you can touch
Clear
on
to
it.
me that you are lawyer, not scientist. But I want to ask you specifically, why don't you use alternative technology? And generator is what, 250 years old technology? It has solar system, dry weathers. You don't use anything of that. Why?
I can't answer that question. I don't know. But I can tell you, I saw a solar facility, and it was about 40 acres. A solar facility I saw, so something tells me we're trying to keep it pretty compact
It's
here.
not about solar energy, this whole system is obsolete. There are alternative approach,
Okay, so
solar.
what you're challenging then is, I guess, the entire technological foundation of AT&T, Verizon, T-Mobile, and Sprint.
No, yes, so it's just change. And the only reason why you want the tower is to add value to what AT&T stock is worth. That's why you want the tower here.
DAS
Because it's
systems,
obsolete.
which is going on the Dennis Avenue Health Center as we speak, as well as.
They're great for indoor and stadium.
Well, okay, that's where it's at, and AT&T is the founder, so there you
My
go.
last question is anybody at AT&T aware of negative publicity?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
If we could just allow this gentleman just help us facilitate.
We have a lot of folks here who have questions who aren't even bothering to raise their hands.
Yes.
And it's been an hour and a half almost. Can we get to a Q&A where people can raise their hand, get called on, wait 30 seconds, move on to the next person?
Perhaps one question first.
Okay.
Okay,
Please, if I could ask, let's let him say, you're going to disagree with him. Let him get through it so we can get
Health
through it.
effects. On one hand, everybody said they have coverage. Well, if you have coverage, then you're within range of a macro cell, if that's where your coverage is coming from. Okay, there hasn't been, so there's a couple things here. One, there has been no study, and radio waves have been around for a long time. There's been no study putting together a health effect, right? So that's why counties allow it, states allow it, and that's why the federal government allows it.
The FCC.
So look, I'm sorry, let me get this out and you can run with it. Let's assume we're gonna disagree. Check out National Cancer Society, okay? World Health Organization. Do your own research.
Yeah, we
American Cancer Society.
There are no longitudinal studies.
Okay, Q&A. If you've not had a chance to shout your way through.
I'm the resident here, I'm not part of the association, so I don't need to. You said earlier that there's going to be a 25 by 30
Raise your
foot
hand.
pad. Excuse me. I'm talking. 25 by 30 foot pad with a generator will be sitting as back of the cell tower. You also mentioned that there could be up to 2 to 3 of those 25 by 30 foot pads for future carriers such as Verizon, T-Mobile, Sprint, et cetera, should they be adding their service to this current transmission facility. Would those mean that additional generators would be added to those 25 by 30 pad sites? So say three companies join that cell tower. There could actually be 3 generators on the site?
700 gallons.
It's inevitable.
That's huge.
Okay.
All burning on power.
Who's the next person?
Master Representative, please.
Yes.
I have a question. When you got your approval from the tower committee, was there not a requirement that you investigate the aesthetic impacts of the tower?
Yes.
And what has AT&T done about that?
Well, they did a balloon study. We never got to it, but I have handouts for you. And had we had the open house, you'd have been able to see up close what the balloon study and the visual.
But the balloon
impact
study was done before this application, correct? Not after the approval. Has AT&T made...
It was done during the tower committee.
But then the tower committee voted and said AT&T needs to consider the aesthetic impacts of the tower, correct?
I don't have that on me, but I do.
I believe it was a condition of the tower committee's approval that AT&T
Well,
consider...
just so you know, the tower committee recommends.
Recommendation. it was a condition of the recommendation that AT&T consider the aesthetic impacts of the tower.
Yes.
Has the tower design changed because of that condition? It has not.
So what we found is that there was not going to be very much visual impact.
In your judgment?
Yes. And there's one open question right now where the homeowners association had asked if we would do another balloon test. And I hope that we do, because I think that people can come. No, I can't do that right now because
There are no.
Has AT&T considered any kind of disguise for the tower?
we would absolutely if we thought it was.
Has AT&T considered a design that hides the antennas inside the tower to carry the antennas?
We wouldn't consider that because of the technology and the size of those boxes.
Are there any pictures of adjacent?
Does anybody else have a question that hasn't had anything? Yes, ma'am.
Visually see, so.
These pictures, where are they from?
Okay, well, it shows
shots looking north,
Right.
south, east, and west.
I don't
We can
recognize
take,
it.
on
Where are they
request,
from?
as many as you want,
They're
at different
not from
locations.
any of the bordering properties? They're not from any of the other
If you were told,
There
hey,
must
you
be
need
a
to take
mix.
one here,
You must
here,
have
here,
brought from-
we'd be more than happy to do
Sligo
it.
Middle School.
So they agree to do another.
Glen Haven Elementary School. What I can tell you, you can try to look at this yourself.
This is an embarrassment.
1705 to 1707 Dublin. In
How
between
about
those
Dennis
two.
and Hayes?
Yeah.
How about
across the church? How about behind the church?
What about the town?
Here's 2000 Dennis Avenue where you can see it. So the engineer, you can ask, I know Tectonic did this, were you there?
No, my technician went out there, but basically, I was just discussing with someone over there, when we go out, my technician sets the balloon, goes around and looks for visual areas, but basically, we're told to hit one from the north, south, east, and west. But if there are specific sites on the west, we can go.
Is it a 10-story?
How high is that?
10-story tower? 10-story tower?
That balloon was 101 feet. That one.
Question over here?
Yeah, right over here. So this is more to the neighborhood. I worked my whole career in radio and television and studied the effects of the electromagnetic waves. Yeah? You can't hear? A little better? In the shooting zone? So I spent my whole career in radio and television, studied the effects of the electromagnetic waves on people, and I know that they've tried to put it numerous times on top of schools and public buildings. They were trying on Sligo Middle School for a long time. I've also been approached property that the family owns in Virginia by a couple of the AT&T and Verizon to build a tower on farmland. So I know a lot of the contractual things that they discuss. And the scary thing is, once the tower goes up, there are very little limitations on what they can do after the tower is posted. So for future reference, and I also want everybody here to be aware of, they're quoting things that there have not been studies. There have been studies of the effects of electromagnetic waves on a population that's constantly exposed to them. And we are, because of technology, exposed to more and more electromagnetic waves, from Wi-Fi in our homes to microwaves to cellular waves. There's all kinds of electromagnetic forces that we are surrounded by, and we don't want to be finding out 10 years later of the negative effects. And the biggest question that they raised, he said there's been no studies of the loss of value properties. Just ask yourself this question. Don't rely on any studies. If you had a choice of a same house in the view of a cellular tower or a television tower that's sending out a constant stream of electromagnetic waves to your family and your children, or one that wasn't there, which one would you choose?
The studies that I was referencing, and maybe some of the studies that I can share with you, looked at that, right? And on an individual level, of course there are people that say, I would choose differently. There are also people that would say, I work out of my home. I want the coverage in my house. And I have to look at.
Are you an AT&T sales representative?
I've got to look at.
It's not a fact.
I've got to look at electric poles. I got to do that too. It's part of the infrastructure, and that's why over the big picture, studies show there aren't. That doesn't mean individually you may not have a preference, but big picture, it doesn't impact.
Give us the facts.
That's-
I think that's my question, is you're telling us that AT&T thinks that this area needs more coverage because you see that there's this hole in coverage, but you're basically telling us that we need more coverage. When do we get to tell AT&T that we need more coverage?
Yes.
When do I, as an AT&T customer, when do I get to say coverage is fine in my house? I don't want another cell phone tower. I would rather have Sligo Creek watershed, which is the reason why I moved here in the first place. I would rather have forests. I would rather have these things. These things are more important to me than coverage. I don't need more coverage.
Yes, ma'am.
I'm still trying to understand the visual impact. If I want to go and see a built transmission tower, where do I go to look at it when it's completed and what you're proposing to put?
Something
here?
comparable.
Something I can just go and look at and say, this is what's going to be in this spot.
Yes, 3 within a mile of when I came was a.
What's the time
Well, the ones in the program, I'm not sure if those are, they can be from location.
What's the size of the tower?
101 feet.
I got a picture from the company of what the tower looked like, and before I got the picture of what the tower looks like, I was interested. When I saw what the building and the tower looked like, I was mortified. It's an abomination.
Go look at Wheaton High School. Wheaton High School has one right on the road next to the building. You can see one up close and personal.
I mean, I guess part of what I'd say is that people are right when there are a lot of telecom facilities around. So keep your eyes open, you'll see them. And I'd have to find one that's exactly 101 feet or close to it, and I can try to get that information too.
And that's the key, that's 9 or 10 stories. That's like 9 or 10 stories.
Because all wireless operates by line of sight, so it has to communicate with your phone.
We
Yes,
don't
ma'am.
have 9 or 10 stories in our neighborhood.
I'm sorry, hold on 1 second.
How high was the tower that you said that was built in Montgomery near the board school?
I think 120, but it might have been 100, between 100 and 120.
Do you know where that's located? If you can look at that.
And you can't get close to it. Can't get close
It's
to
on
it.
the school property?
Yeah, and it's estates next to it, so no, you're fine. You're not going to get too close to that one.
That's a wide open area.
And Bullis just bought the entire, like, 10 acres next to their property, too. Funny that they just did that.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, when you're talking about these balloon tests, I just want to address everybody in the room, because maybe you don't live directly next to the tower, but put yourself in the position of the people who do live directly next to the tower, and are you willing to compromise somebody who's a member of a community with set like $50,000, $100,000 on their property, their health? That's what we're talking about right now. For a better cell phone coverage, seriously, switch providers.
And there's
This is serious. He's talking about research. That's what I do. I'm a PhD student, and it is really hard to draw correlations between things and provide like across the board data. It's not possible. So he can drop rhetoric all he wants because he's a lawyer. And he doesn't care because it's not his life. But think about the people in your community when you're fighting for this, because what he's doing is unnecessary. There's enough technology that will be coming up that you don't need this. There's no need for
I live in Linden Civic Association across the Beltway diagonal, and we are here to support you guys, because as a whole community, we don't I used to live behind Sligo Middle School when we fought T-Mobile on that on a technicality. The fee they were paying to the school was going to be less than $15,000.
No.
Yeah.
They were going to give $3,000 to Montgomery County School. $1,000 went to the principal at Sligo. And again, when he brought together the facts, he told all the benefits. How we're going to have a great cell phone coverage. But he never mentioned one word about the health and all the bad effects.
Does anybody,
At what cost?
does anybody work for the federal government? Okay. Does anybody trust everything the federal government says? But, so let's talk about health. Look at, so the FCC, think about this, the FCC, federal. What was your point?
So what was the point of the federal government? Can I say something?
I'm trying to make a point.
Right. Wait.
So the FCC regulates, Federal Communications Commission regulates all the wireless emissions, right? So they studied it for years. And then they looked at impact to the environment, impact to studies that have been on animals or humans or whatever. And what they come up with and what they ended up putting into law is that, for better or for worse, and this is what you can take up with your federal connections, that there's no study that shows an adverse impact to health, and therefore, health effects and environmental effects can't be considered.
That was 20 years
20 years ago, information. 20 years ago, information.
I'm trying to give you, that is a fact, it is the law.
Because it's so old.
Yes, sir.
What happens if the gensets go on?
I have a question.
That is not true.
You were talking about balancing, there's a balancing going on, the location versus the need versus the community impact, if any. Okay, there's a balancing. The problem with that, conceptually, isn't it, that AT&T makes the decision about the balancing with a rubber stamp from the county, and the people in the community who are affected most by the benefits and the detriments are not really involved in that weighing or balancing. And that, as a lawyer, that should bother you, because balancing is important. As a lawyer, I'm a lawyer, I understand that. And the community is a third-party beneficiary or an affected party, and they're not given any much involvement in that balancing test. So I consider that the core issue here. The core issue is, yes, there's benefits, sure, and there's detriments, but who weighs them and for what reason? And I think...
And ultimately, the county will.
Well, the county takes... The county is not allowed to, under federal law, they're preempted. The county is preempted from making those kind of decisions. Under federal law, they are told, basically, if this is done this way, they have to approve it. They're not allowed to bring in health effects.
Well, you're talking about health effects, but in terms of weighing impact to the environment, or wetlands, or...
Yes, I grant that. They are allowed to...
That's all the county, that's what they decide. Visual impact, that's what they're looking at, but you're right. That's what I wanted to say, is that the federal government took health effects off the table, but all of those other pieces of the Montgomery County...
But I think what people are trying to say here is that they want to be involved in that balancing, and they feel they're not being given a chance to do that. They're willing to give up some of the coverage advantages in exchange for not having a tower. That's all I'm saying.
Can I add two questions? First thing is, the thing that's really lacking here is we do not have the current plans. Those current plans have not been made public, so it's really, really hard to discuss this when we don't have that document. We need that document. So please send it to John, and he can distribute it to everybody else.
What I'm going to do is we're working with our environmental engineers to finalize it.
Okay, then let's be clear that this meeting is not discussing the final plan.
Right, I did say that.
Okay, so we just want to be I want everyone to be very clear on that. So
Just like it changed from our first submission, it could change.
Right, and so this meeting does not count as a discussion of the final plans. If you want to know what the community thinks, we're going to need to see the final plans. That's number one.
Just come out and support if we tweak something?
No. I'm sorry, did I say something that caused you to react that way? Because I do apologize. As another lawyer, I'm sorry if I said it the wrong way.
Changes, right? It's going to be part of our submission, and that is what we already have agreed to provide.
Okay, hear me? Right. We want the final submit. I'm just saying that. Okay, number one. Number two, we want another balloon test. And here's why. My neighborhood is across the street. We have old trees. We just lost our 120-year-old oak. I'm pretty daggone sure if I stand on my deck, I'm going to see the tower. I want a balloon test. And I want to know how many other people in this room, please raise your hands, want a balloon test. So you can tell I want you to tell AT&T how many people at this meeting are requesting a balloon test. Not one person. Not a community association, but how many individual owners want a balloon test?
Are there any other questions?
I wanted to get back to something about the wildlife. Who is doing your wildlife inventory?
It's done.
So, the wildlife would be part of this?
Yeah. Is it part of the forest conservation plan? Okay. So it could be controlled at the local level, and then there are also the federal level.
They already got sign off from the state.
So it's already been done.
Yeah, we saw that.
My property is just I've got a couple of questions. First one, have the Sligo Middle School application was rejected. The Sligo Baptist Church comes to do it the reason I ask that is for the last 30 years, Sligo Baptist Church has subletted, leased, or whatever, and it's constantly going on right now. They've leased property to Holy Cross Hospital, park up there, they have commercial vehicles there. I know this is a second, but the way Sligo Baptist Church is operating, not to save the salvation of people's souls, is to enrich their own pockets. And I don't see where it's going to stop. And visibility is the last thing.
So I think the first question was, did Sligo come to, Baptist Church come to us, or did we go to them? I believe our site acquisition folks reached out to them, because it was in the area, so.
And the visibility, over the past 45 years, 46 years, the woods up behind the top hill have deteriorated. We've lost so much by way of nature, storms, and Sligo Baptist has actually bulldozed trees to put in a parking lot, extend the parking lot, put in a basketball court, all sorts of things. And they even allow a construction company to operate and store equipment there. Much to the, I don't know if this is the name, and this is a matter of fact, I took it before, back in the year 2001, where they were cited for 2 violations of Boston and misuse of allowing commercial vehicles to park. We're going right back to the same situation. Thank you.
Not here, where?
That's a good question. We looked at,
You didn't look anywhere.
we looked at,
800 feet away.
Let him talk, please.
so that's a good question. We looked at the church. So what you do is you look in the area where we have a need.
Could you show us on the map?
We would try to, I don't have that map really. But basically it is, and I read those addresses all already. But we look at larger properties that can meet the zoning code requirements. And then approach those, and then see if our radio frequency engineer says that's a good ground elevation.
Here's the places they could look at.
And
Holy
then,
Cross Hospital, Southern Association Water Tank, Hughes United Methodist Church, Montgomery Baptist Church, Lincoln Fillmore Condos, Belvedere Apartments, Sligo Creek Golf Course, and the Dennis Avenue. Eight of the 3 spots. Go ahead.
Important.
yes ma'am, was there anything else that you had then?
That was what I wanted to know.
That was done in 2006.
That was done in 2006.
And you guys didn't do anything.
Did you actually ask Holy Cross if they would be willing to have it on their property?
I guess what we were looking at, how far away that was from the search rig, but I don't recall that they were further that far away from the search.
And the helicopter.
So, are there any other questions?
Yes.
Yes, ma'am.
I've listened respectfully to everything that you had to say this evening, and if you leave tonight with one point, I would like you to consider this. Would you please, for the sake of this community that does not want this cell tower, would you please look at other locations? Not because we don't want it in our backyard for no reason, or it's not going to be pretty, but because there's some very serious issues pertaining to flooding and people who are concerned about their families. And if you could just please look at other locations, we would be very
The group here has gone to great lengths to talk about how AT&T does not live here, does not know this community. I think there is one group in this issue that does live here, and that's the church. How many people here in this room are part of that congregation? Anyone?
For what?
Part of that church. I just hope that people bring the same tenacity that they did in this meeting to the church.
Yes.
So I think that's the way to win this.
Yes.
People who got there and come here and get AT&T to not make a business decision on this, sorry, but you're naive. They were always going to make a business decision. This was not going to change their mind, but there's other ways to fight that, and that to me is through the church.
Yeah, they're not the bad guys, the church are. There's our mouths with the church.
Two members of the board of the Forest Estates Community Association did sit down with the pastor. We had a friendly conversation, opened up communications. It is a neighborhood church. I mean, we would like it not to be, it's easy to get upset at a big Fortune 50 corporation, but this is a neighborhood church. And they would like to earn some income off their property, I'm sure. We conveyed the community's concerns. We sat down neighbor to neighbor and said, we're going to be opposing this at every stage. We just think you should know that. It was a friendly conversation. I think it was useful. Hopefully, we can take a little bit of the temperature down. But just so everybody knows that we have reached out to the church. And certainly anybody is free to do so. I don't mean to say no one else should. But the community association has talked.
Well, my question is that you're saying that you talked to the church and it seemed like it was a good, reasonable conversation, but it doesn't sound like it changed their mind at all. I mean, they're going forward. I mean, so I realize that in the community you don't want to be bad to a church, but the church is profiting off of it. You can't ignore that.
Not only that,
You can't ignore
not only
that.
that, but they have been doing this progressively over time. This is like just building up. They've done other stuff, tearing down other forests, building the parking lot, doing all sorts of, they're not thinking about this. And maybe if it's the pastor who has that opinion, maybe we need to talk to the people in the congregation.
True. And I don't mean to suggest that nobody should talk to the pastor. I just wanted you to know that I have, so I don't want to try to quell that.
So basically, yes, sir.
I was just going to say briefly that being involved in a church organization myself, pastor grade, there's going to be a governing body under
Correct.
the pastor.
That's right.
That represents the congregation, as many of you probably already know. There is nothing wrong with respectful, serious pressure with those people.
But we can't figure out who they are.
I've sustained it on issues at our church. There's nothing wrong with that. So don't feel like you need to defer because it's a church environment.
It's a very good point. If anybody has any relationships with the church, with anybody in the congregation, I'd love to hear it.
So I guess what I'd like to just say, I want to wind this up. We've tried to give you the basics. Obviously, I didn't give you as much about health or property values or even visual impact. I'll get you some more information about that. We're going to follow up about the balloon test.
And the site visit as well, we requested that. The site visit, we need to see, because it's changing, the plans are changing, we need to see exactly where the station is going to be located.
Right.
Because it is close to our homes, and I'm one of them. But I do have something to say, and I know I've said a lot, but I feel I have to say this to you. I'm a healthcare provider. I want you to tell me, are you going to expose our homes, our families to low-dose, non-ionizing radiation with your cell tower through no choice of ours? Will you be exposing us under this field?
That's what they're planning. Yeah, all right.
Yes, you are. Okay, thank you. And the other thing is, I went to Steel in Air, Steel in the Air, a big place of how you can have a tower in your property and my property and all these properties. And I went under health to see how do you sell this concept to people. And you know what I learned? It was really good, because it was written by an attorney. And this attorney said, well, you will get a lot of questions, a lot of people are all about this and blah, blah, blah. But it said, we are not scientists. We are attorneys. And so thank you.
Yes or no? Can I ask one more
I
question?
need to wrap it up.
Can I ask one more question? It's one more thing.
Could you ask afterwards?
I don't think this gentleman is over here.
Oh, yes, sir.
So, first off, I'm an AT&T customer and a resident, and I'm opposed because it doesn't fit with the existing use of the neighborhood. I just wonder, when you, I'm a father of infant, when you develop a property like this, a big parcel like that, how do you determine who the neighbors are, adjoining neighbors? I mean, there are folks over here in these.
It's defined by the county.
Whoever touches.
Typically, the budding property is actually touching.
Does the county want it?
Yeah.
Or do you have to keep going for the next?
No, the county is not.
Neighbor.
So across the road.
Oh, yeah, I'm not. No.
Definitely these codes.
I work with Greg, right?
I'd have to look at the code and see different counties say across any adjoining road. And I can't remember all
This
the
happens to
whether
the
it
neighborhood.
So if they develop a second parcel from raw property and improve it and profit on it, does that change the status of that parcel at all?
No. So it's zoned a certain residential zone. And then there are certain uses that are allowed by right. And then there are certain uses that are generally compatible, but you have to show X, Y, and Z criteria have been met for a special exception. This falls under the special exception.
May I ask about liability? May I ask about liability? So these cell towers, let's say they go up on a land, cell tower falls down somebody's house, diesel fuel leaks and comes downhill, cell tower catches on fire, catches the woods on fire, puts our houses at risk. Issues about flooding along the swell that is next to the woods and next to the ponds. Who is liable for this? Is it AT&T? Is it Sligo Baptist Church? Is it Montgomery County? Is it Mayor? Who
Seems
has?
like a pretty good question in terms of, I can only think about like how complicated the liability issues could get.
If something falls on my house from the cell tower, who do I sue?
Anyway, I think that's the question. I think that's the answer.
No, because I find it concerning that I
How far is
come
your
to
house?
215 feet, it'll be 215 feet from my backyard.
From the,
So even if, I mean, just,
But I'm,
even if it
I don't want,
fell, it doesn't matter.
you don't know when you're talking about, because you never been in my house.
She's 50 feet.
Can I finish? Can I just finish?
Our setbacks,
Phil, can I just finish?
the setbacks, just so, I don't know if I got to the setbacks. The setbacks are a 1-to-1 setback. So a 100-foot
That's not what I asked.
tower is going to be 101 feet.
That's not what I asked. That's not what I asked. I gave you
You asked
4
me who would be
different.
liable, I don't know.
Sir, with all due respect to you, I gave you 4 different scenarios. And you are a lawyer coming to this meeting about an AT&T cell tower, and you cannot tell me who is liable if something happens on that site. I find that very concerning.
I just have one 5-second point. He talked about the FCC not seeing anything wrong with the electromagnetic wave, and the government has signed off on it. Just keep in mind, when I went to school, we used to play with mercury because the government thought that was okay. And lead.
Well, and RJ Reynolds
Sure.
they had a little issue, didn't they?
So they're not always right on top of what's harmful to the population.
And also, if you go to the latest edition of Fierce Wireless, you will see that the FCC is now revisiting their laws because they realize things are out of control. That towers are going in residential neighborhoods, there's not much control of the RF systems. There's no, they're really concerned, and you need to read about it.
So here's what I'd say. Does anybody, let me ask you a question. Did anybody come in support that would like to speak out now? So, because if you did, yes ma'am.
I was just going to say, and so in that vein, An ounce of prevention is worth a pound of cure. Put it somewhere else.
Right. I mean, I hear you, in someone else's backyard, I understand.
That is not what we are saying.
That's what you're saying.
No, that's not what we are saying.
But that's what you're doing, because we already said no to Sligo Middle and you moved it down the street.
So here's what I would say. We've tried to give you some information, we're gonna follow up with that additional information. I do want your comments, a lot of this is starting to get, I think we've heard most of the concerns, right? We're gonna take that back.
That's my question, that's the question I'm trying to ask. How do we talk to AT&T?
Who's our contractor?
We want to speak to the AT&T company, not the contractor, not a lawyer, but AT&T. I'm an AT&T customer. Give me a name. Somebody who's running this case.
What's your contract?
Here you go.
But isn't it scary that AT&T?
Everybody, very quickly. Everybody, very quickly. Keep in mind, it's not AT&T, it'll be another sales company. They are not the bad guys. The church is the bad guys. They're the ones who bring risk in our neighborhood. Put the sign up, yeah, but the church is allowing us to. If they say no,
international warning sign for radiation. Yes. This is the water tower. This has got to be that's the thing, I don't know. So yeah, he mentioned middle school. That's not he mentioned church. I have to go back and look at the applications. I got every site
So I'm you'll talk to me before I will. So